Hello, our amazing listeners of Neurocareers doing the impossible. It's your podcast host, Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, or simply Dr. K. And I'm excited to welcome you to the second season of our podcast, exploring entrepreneurial careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies. Have you ever wondered what it takes to transform brain science into groundbreaking products and services? Are you curious about the fearless visionaries who bridge the gap between neuroscience and entrepreneurship to change people's life and reshape our world? Are you ready to explore how to navigate the uncharted waters of neurotech entrepreneurship? In season 2, we're diving deep into the world of entrepreneurial ventures in neuroscience and neurotechnologies. If you are looking to create an immediate impact and translate your neuroscience and neurotech ideas into innovative services that truly make a difference in the world, this season is tailor made for you. Join us and learn from the best in the field about succeeding in the entrepreneurial journey in neuroscience and neurotechnology where innovation meets impact. We've got an incredible lineup of guests who are not only shaped their careers, but have also made a profound impact on the field. Throughout this season, we'll explore the captivating stories of visionaries who've risen to the challenge, who've turned obstacles into opportunities, and who've innovated in ways that are changing the landscape of neurocareers. So, whether you are a seasoned professional in the field, an inspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the intersection of science and business in this ever evolving arena, the season promises inspiration, education, and a glimpse into the exciting future of neurocareers. I am Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, the founder of the Institute of Neuroapproaches, where I help people establish successful careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies through career coaching and education. So let's dive into the entrepreneurial journeys that are shaping the future of neuroscience and neurotechnologies together. Tune in now into the thrilling episode number 63. Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Neurocareers Doing the Impossible podcast. Today, we are diving deep into the world of EEG technology and entrepreneurship with our guest, Jared Beckwith. Jared is not just an expert in EEG technology, he is also the chairman and CEO of AiON EEG, based in Wesley Chapel, Florida. AiON EEG is on a mission to revolutionize EEG review and analysis software. Their flagship product is designed to do something extraordinary, reduce noise, and display long-term trends in brain data, all with the aim of simplifying seizure detection. This innovative approach has the potential to transform how we understand and manage neurological conditions. Jared himself is passionate about building the best EEG review and analysis software available. His commitment to improving brain data analysis aligns perfectly with our podcast's mission to explore the dynamic intersection of neuroscience, technology, and entrepreneurship. Join us in this episode as we learn about Jared's entrepreneurial journey, the challenges he's faced, and the groundbreaking work being done at AiON EEG. Get ready for a deep dive into the world of EEG technology and its potential to change lives. Without further ado, let's jump into the conversation with Jared Beckwith, Chairman and CEO of AiON EEG. Hello, Jared.
Hello, how's everybody doing today? It's going to be a great episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jared, for coming and talking to our listeners. This is the first time actually we are exploring the word of EG technologists and what they can do to really create an impact on how we evaluate neurological disorders, specifically epilepsy area of your focus. So, but first of all, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and where you are joining us from? I think we have for the first time the Floridian here apart from me.
Yeah. So my name's Jared Beckwith. I'm an EEG technologist. That's what I do by trade. I live in Florida my whole life, near the Tampa area, a little bit north of Tampa. It's called Wesley Chapel. EEG is my passion. I initially started working in the hospital as a student, learning everything that I could. You have to do 1 year of unpaid, clinical hours. So I learned everything I could during that year. And I really, I guess, fell in love with it, I guess you could say, and went on and continued. And now I'm building my own EEG software. So I'm falling down the rabbit hole of EEG, and it's been a wonderful journey so far.
Yeah, that's very interesting journey. I think it's a very important application of EEG. We hear a lot about EEG, neurotechnologies, brain-computer interfaces, but we don't talk about the fact that EEG is being used on the regular basis continuously in hospitals. Especially in neurology departments, neurosurgery departments. So, this is the whole world of EEG application. And that's why I would like to stop and explore this in more detail with you. So, first of all, why did you choose to go and volunteer those hours? Yes, give up your free time to do something with EEG.
Yeah, so I initially was thinking about getting into brain computer interfaces. Was doing a lot of research on that. And you can do that either with EEG or implantable electrodes, which is obviously a lot more dangerous and more high risk. And I was thinking I really wanted to get into that area, but the problem with EEG for brain computer interfaces, at least I see, is that it's hard to get really like a high definition signal because you got not only the skull in the way, you got, different layers of skin and stuff as well. So you can't really get a as high definition of a signal as you can with implanted electrodes. So I was thinking it's probably going to take a while for the field of brain computer interfaces to, I guess, develop and mature. So then I found that I guess the most practical thing for me to do in the meantime is to learn about the brain through the EEG, and I'll learn a lot. And maybe in the future, as the field of brain computer interfaces progresses, and maybe they find more non-invasive ways to record the brain better, and artificial intelligence improves, and we're able to actually decode these signals even better, I think I'll be in a good spot maybe decades from now because I already put in all this foundational work learning about EEG and learning how to read the brain signals. I think I'll be set up for my future. So I'm thinking about like long term. I like to think long term. So, and this is the most practical thing in 2023 for me to be doing, at least in my opinion.
Yes, and that's also a great advice to those who just want to join the field. Start thinking ahead what awaits us in the area of neurotech and where you can start. And you chose very interesting start for yourself in the hospital setting. How was it for you? How easy it was to get that volunteering place at the hospital? I guess that it's not the easiest thing also to do. Can you explain the process? Yes, if somebody wants to go through this process as well, how did you do this?
Yeah, so I signed up for college, and there's multiple ones like remotely. They're all pretty good. Essentially, you have to get connected with a clinical site, so like a hospital in your area. So I had to go to all the different hospitals in my area, get the EEG department manager's numbers. It was a big chase. A couple of them, they weren't taking students or anything like that, but I did find one that was looking for a student, and I was able to get my spot in there. And the people at the hospital were just really knowledgeable, and I got to soak up everything. Looking at EEGs, they even let me watch a surgery where an epilepsy patient, they couldn't get rid of their seizures with just medication. So they had to remove a part of their brain to hopefully stop the seizures. Those are very valuable experiences. And even though I wasn't getting paid for the 1 year that I was learning, I think I was getting paid a lot in knowledge, which is paying dividends today.
Yes, absolutely. And can you tell more about what is being done with EEG? Why people are using EEG in the hospitals? What is the main purpose of that?
Right. So the best thing to use EEG for in the hospitals is the best at detecting epileptic activity. So mostly seizure patients. For example, you have just regular epilepsy patient, you have those patients, but you also have ICU patients who, let's say they had a stroke, and now that they had a stroke and they're in the ICU, they're at a higher risk for epileptic activity in that area with the stroke. So we'll have them on epilepsy monitoring while they're in the ICU as well. So it's essentially the best test to detect any epileptic activity. And while we're monitoring, if we end up seeing any of that, then you can call the doctor. Then the doctor will have the nurse administer some medication through the IV, and it's pretty amazing to see the EEG patterns change from like someone constantly seizing, and then just magically with the IV medication, it almost instantly just goes back to normal. So it's pretty beautiful in my eyes. It's art.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just so impressed how this field is developing and evolving, and with the intrasurgical monitoring as well, and how all these technologies are being used, and the whole rooms there are with the stream from different places where you can look at that seizure activity and the behavior of the patient. So can you tell us a little bit more now about your work? What did you do there? How did you monitor patients?
In the beginning, they would just stick me with the easy routine EEG patients. Maybe people just come in for a checkup. So routine EEG is between 20 and 30 minutes. So I would go in, talk to the patient, ask them what medications they're taking, do a little interview, and then I would place about 30 wires in total on their scalp, and also for heart monitors as well. And we would record for 30 minutes, and then I would take all the wires, clean their scalp and all that. So that's what they would start me out doing in the beginning. They're called routine EEGs. And then in the future, I progressed to doing the long-term monitoring, where you have more high-risk patients like the ICU people, or even just epilepsy patients trying to do like a 72-hour study, a longer study for the doctor. So on those cases, you'd kind of essentially like glue the wires on with gauze. It's not real glue, but it's essentially glue on the gauze. That way they were able to record for 72 hours about on average. And we'd have people sitting in like a little monitoring room with a bunch of different screens of all our patients in the hospital, and we would take, it's about 4 patients each for real-time monitoring of these EEGs, and I would just monitor them for, in the hospital, we work 12-hour shifts, so we had someone working a 12-hour shift during the day, and then we'd give a report to the night shift who would do 12 hours. Yeah, so essentially I started out doing routine EEGs, and then once I got better and the hospital started trusting my skills more because I started getting better, I was really interested. Then they let me do the more high risk, ICU continuously monitoring patients. So that was my progression.
Yes, so you were spending long hours. If it's 12 hours you needed to do a day, how did you manage to still provide for yourself, for your living? Because you were not getting paid in money. Of course, you were getting paid in knowledge, but what about that financial support that you needed? What did you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So luckily, I have very amazing parents because I'm not sure. I really don't think I would have been able to have a job at the same time and then also do college and clinical hours at the hospital. I feel like some people have done it, but my hat's off to you guys. You guys are very impressive. I was able to stay with my parents. They really support me. I have a great relationship with them. And they knew it was only like a short 1 year program and then I would actually be able to have a career and start making money. So yeah, essentially shout out to my parents. I love them very much.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, just to clarify that not only you were doing this practical training at the hospital, you also were attending college where you were learning about EEG technology. Is that correct?
Yeah, so during the college portion, we would go to the hospital 2 days a week. I think 8 hours during the training portion, 8 hours a week, 2 days a week. And then the rest of the days of the week, we would be doing online college work. Since I didn't have an EEG college near me, so this kind of a very niche, strange thing, I did a remote college, and they would just give us online work and online lectures through Zoom and stuff. And then 2 days a week at the hospital training, getting the actual, hands on experience. Because you can only read so much about EEG. At some point, you got to go in and actually put the wires on the patient's scalp and interact with the patients and all that. So, yeah, it was a pretty good setup, I think.
Mhm. So one portion is the recording of EEG, which you figured out fairly well, and you use certain software to record. And then there was a portion of the analysis of that data to see what's happening, which also this is entirely a whole software package. So can you tell a little bit about that and about your critical approach to looking at things? What did you start seeing in the EEG software that maybe was missing or needed certain updates, improvements?
Yeah, so I was always into software since before I got even into this. I was thinking about even getting like a bachelor's in software development or something like that. So I've always been interested in software and I know a lot about it. So I was, analyzing the software that we would use in the hospital. And while there is great things about it, because otherwise they wouldn't even be using it in the hospital environment, there's great things about it, but there's also some things missing in my opinion, or it just wasn't it's not completely optimized. There's still some things missing. For example, they have automated seizure detectors, and when I was looking at the automated seizure detection, I saw like it just kept making mistakes. It wasn't very good in my opinion. So I was thinking maybe I could do better. I know it sounds crazy because these are $1 million companies, but thinking maybe if I give it a shot, I can probably push the field forward and improve it. That was my thinking. I just saw small little things that could be improved, and I'm crazy enough to think that I can improve it myself.
Mhm. So, what do you think would happen if those improvements would be made? How the field of EG monitoring, EG analysis would change?
Right. So I think if there's better automated detections, first, the automated detectors will probably be best on those initial routine EEGs that I was doing as a student, because those people are a lot more normal than some very abnormal ICU patients. So not only is it easier for humans to read, it's going to be easier for AI to read as well. So I think that will be like the first thing that happens, and that'll free up time for the neurologists to focus more on the more complicated ICU cases or more difficult cases where the automated detection systems, they can have dozens of false positives and not do very well, but the automated detectors will do essentially very good on the normal EEGs and kind of like get rid of that burden for the neurologist. So I don't think even if automated detectors get really good, it's not like people are just gonna have no jobs and go home. I think it's just gonna allow us to do a more higher volume of EEGs in general. It's gonna free up our time to do more and more. I think it's kind of like how in farming they used to do everything by hand, all that, and then they had the invention of tractors. And tractors just allowed us to farm more and more crops faster and faster. So I think more and more people are going to be able to get an EEG if they actually need it because it's going to free up a lot more time and resources for us to help more patients.
Absolutely. And this is that positive outlook, which I hear from clinicians. I think the worries come more from people who are not that connected to clinical work. And we had some podcasts with the neuroradiologist, and again, now with you, who don't worry about people having less work to do. We just can help more people, people who never would have an opportunity even to get their EEG evaluated and improve the quality overall of how we approach this type of recordings. Yes. Very good. So, where did you decide to start developing of this new software? As today we're talking about entrepreneurial journeys. So, if you can talk a little bit about that, how did you decide to develop software and your plan overall as an entrepreneur? Yes, to make it available as a product that people can purchase.
Yeah, I guess I started making the software because initially I got into this because I was interested in brain computer interfaces. And that's all about using computers to decode brain signals and also send information into the brain if it's an implantable one. So, well, I'm just using software to decode the brain signals and detect epileptic activity. That's how I got into it, and I just started really small. First, I started off with things not even related to EEG. I started, doing a project on AI, looking up tutorials on the internet, Google, YouTube. I did a tutorial to have an AI recognize handwritten digits, like 0 through 9, because people can write their numbers all different types of ways. They can write a 4 like this or whatever, and they can have 2s with a loop in them. So, sounds like a very easy problem. I guess it kinda is, but to teach a machine to recognize different types of handwritten digits, that was the very first important step. And then once I was able to do that, I was able to look at some tutorials online to have a machine tell the difference between cats and dogs. That was a pretty interesting project. And then I was able to take a picture of my cat and then put it into my machine and said, yep, this is a cat. So I knew it was working. So then after that, I found this competition, Hospital of the Future competition from Texas Children's Hospital. And he had essentially developed some novel idea, and it was very, like, small. It only took, like, 20 lines of code, and it while it was small, it gave us the confidence to start the business, turn it into an actual business. Sometimes you just need really small steps to get started, and then you can get a little bit of momentum and a little bit of positive feedback, and then you can go start to tackle harder and harder problems. Because not only do your skills improve from doing the small little projects, you also get more confidence, and then you can tackle even bigger problem. And then you're like, "Whoa, I did this even bigger problem." Then you go on to an even bigger problem, and then by the time you know it, it's probably been like 2.5 years or so, and now we launched our first, I guess, alpha test of our EEG software, and people are really liking it so far. And it's all started from very small steps every week over a period of multiple years. And now I look up today and all the code that we wrote it, and I wake up tomorrow, it's not just going to disappear. You're just building on top of what you did every single week. And I think that's my philosophy. Just baby steps and wake up in a couple of years and you'll have something great on your hands.
Did you know how to code before you started working on your first projects in this area? Like you mentioned, AI and recognizing of different types of digits. Did you have experience with coding already, or you learned as you were going?
Good question. So coding, it really takes a certain type of person to be able to do that and even just sit down at your computer for multiple hours. I am not the best programmer, but I'm able to code like very simple programs. I started just downloading a programming language called Python on my computer. So I started. And then you can make it. The first program that everyone makes is called Hello World. You just make the computer print Hello World. I was able to do that. So that's a baby step. And then once I started getting into the AI projects and tutorials, I really got lost on parts of those projects. So I was able to consult with my brother and my dad. So my brother is a computer science degree. He got his bachelor's in computer science. My dad's an engineer, electrical engineer, but he also knows a little bit about coding. So when I wanted to make the handwritten digits project or the cats versus dogs detector, I could like code a little bit of a basic outline, of course, following a tutorial because I was kind of clueless at the time, but they were able to help fill in the missing pieces and then actually make it work on the cats versus dogs thing. And then I was like, wow, my family, when we come together, we can make things happen. Me by myself, I can only do so much, but with the help from my brother and my dad, we're able to do those little projects. And then it's been the same thing with our EEG software as well. I couldn't do it by myself. It's all thanks to them on the coding part for sure.
Yes, so that precludes my next question about your team. Who is on your team? Is it your family, or you included somebody else to help you and to go together with you in this project?
Yeah, so it's me. I guess I run the business, the marketing, and I'm the EEG person. And my dad and my brother, they do the computer programming. And I've tried to hire a PhD student for a little bit, but since I don't have much money, that kind of only lasted a few months, unfortunately. But I think we'll be looking to hire more people in the future once I'm able to get this past the FDA regulations and all that. And we're going to be looking to partner with engineers in the future and give them a percentage of our company to like, I guess, the best engineers. Cause I think we're not just going to be able to do it just us three. We need the help of motivated people in the future. And what better way to do that than give them a part of the business if they're really contributing, a major part to our company. Of course, they should own a percentage of our company, just like I did with my brother and my dad. We just split up the business equally. So we're all equal owners, and we're looking for more people in the future. It's gonna at least a year from now because we have no money right now, but I'm planning ahead.
Yeah, yeah. As you already noted, that's a wonderful feature you have, planning ahead and looking ahead in time. What current developments in neurotechnologies or in general in technologies are inspiring you? We see the boom of AI development, and this is what caught your attention, yes, at the very beginning. So, what of those developments is inspiring you at the moment?
Yeah, so something that inspires me, I guess, going along with brain computer interfaces is I like the idea of, I guess, paralyzed people having electrodes implanted in their motor cortex, the part that is able to control your limbs and have them able to actually control a computer screen or maybe even in the future control their phone with just their thoughts. That's really inspiring to me. I think that's going to be one of the first great uses of brain computer interfaces for people who are totally paralyzed, or they call it locked in syndrome, quadriplegic people. That's one thing. And another application that I'm excited about is reviving sight in blind people. So people who are blind, there's not really a good artificial eye, like an eye replacement. I read a book about a doctor who created a essentially like a prosthetic eye, and he was able to do that by giving the blind patient a pair of glasses, and the glasses would have a camera on them, and the camera would take in the data from the outside world, and then they would have electrodes implanted in the back of the head where the, I guess, visual cortex is. The part that controls your vision is all the way in the back of the head, and the electrodes would stimulate the blind person in the back of the head where the visual cortex is, and they would see like dots, kind of like an outline of the visual world that the camera took in. And I thought that was pretty crazy. It wasn't a very, it's not like they just seen crystal clear vision or anything. It was definitely a very crude thing of vision, but to someone who is completely blind and can't see anything, I think that's a pretty amazing first step. But they did have a lot of some complications with it. They had to go to Portugal to bypass the FDA, and patient was having seizures. So there's a lot of complications with these future neurotechnology, but I'm excited to help solve these problems and push the field forward.
Yes, yeah, that's very interesting that you mentioned this type of visual prosthesis in blind people. I think that's one of the topics that Elon Musk is mentioning, developing his Neuralink implant that it can be used for the purpose of stimulating the visual cortex. And what's interesting, even augmentation of the vision in healthy people. That's also, remote possibility that we can see not even in the spectra that our eye is used to, but in a broader spectrum. And the same with the people who cannot see, also expanding their possibilities. So, how do you look at the augmentation of cognition and senses possibilities in people of the future developments of brain computer interfaces?
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. Who knows what the future can hold with augmentation of abilities, like increasing your ability to learn. Like maybe you could just download information straight to your brain rather than having to take it in through your eyes or your ears. Maybe you could just download it straight into your, I guess, memory center, your hippocampus. Maybe that would be something in the future. It's very speculative, but I think there will be future augmentation of human abilities. Like many decades into the future, I think we're gonna start to see some crazy things. So
Yes, I think so. I think so. And what current developments in technologies and software development, algorithm development inspire you in your work in developing your software?
the main thing, if you're focused in artificial intelligence, there's a lot of different things. You got unsupervised learning, supervised learning, reinforcement learning. It can be pretty overwhelming for someone who's trying to jump into the field of AI and try to get into here. But at least for my specific thing and a lot of practical real world applications, they use something called supervised learning. And that is essentially you take human experts, let's say human doctors, and they label a bunch of seizures. And you're able to take those labeled seizures and then you're able to, I guess, essentially show that to your computer over and over again and train them, hey, computer, this is what a seizure looks like. This is what a seizure looks like. And you keep showing it to them over and over again until the computer eventually starts to learn. You give it some positive feedback when it's doing good. And it's like, okay. But the thing is, you don't want it to just overfit the training data that you give it. You want it to generalize to the real world population. So if you only show it a few examples it's only going to know those few seizure examples, and it's going to fail in the real world when it sees something completely different. So it's a big challenge to get a very large data set and label all these seizures correctly. And because if the doctor labels the seizure incorrectly, the AI is not going to know. It's just going to take what the doctor says as truth, and then you're teaching the AI wrong if the doctor labeled it wrong. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But mainly, I think the most important thing if you're interested in AI is to Google stuff about supervised learning. Even for example, in the cats versus dogs project that I did, in the data set, all they do is give you a bunch of labeled pictures of cats and a bunch of labeled pictures of dogs. And you just throw those into your AI, and that's how it learns. Pretty much labeled data from humans and showing it to an AI. That is, I guess, the basics of supervised learning. And that's probably the most practical, I guess, field for AI right now.
Mhm. What are the next steps that you are planning in your software development?
Good question. Good question. So, right now, we did our first alpha test and we were able to get it on a bunch of people's computers. People were able to mess around with it. I'm giving it away for free, and I got some good feedback. I learned it doesn't work on Apple products. I had a couple of people upset about that. This is literally the first version. I'd never shipped any software before. It doesn't work on Apple products. It didn't work on Windows 10. Yeah, they have to have Windows 11, the most updated Windows. But other than that, I I got pretty good feedback, and now that we've tested it on people's computers, now we have to get it past the FDA, who looks at all medical devices in America, and submit my paperwork to them, and that should be pretty soon. Then they got to look through it, and once they're done with that, then I'll actually be able to sell it to doctors for money and hospitals. And I'll also have the confidence, since I gave it away for free at first, I'll know that it'll actually work. Because even though I gave it away for free in the beginning, like I was still nervous because I'd never done any software. Like I could give it out to 100 people and it could just break and they'd all be mad at me. But no, it worked out. So now I feel more confident in taking that next baby step and actually selling it as a real product in the future. Maybe sometime next year, once the FDA gets around to looking at our application.
Mhm. What people liked about your software?
I think one thing they like is my story behind it. It's kind of a unique, strange story. It's not like a multi-million billion dollar company building something. Some guy trying to build essentially a medical device out of his house with his family. That's interesting. Also, our software, we're able to display long-term trends of EEG brain data on a very small number of pages. So if you're looking at long-term recordings like I was in the hospital, this will be the best way to look at those. And because you can put like a whole hour of data on one page, and that can really speed up review time as long as they also look at the raw EEG signals. But this can help you find the major points of interest, whether it's a seizure, it'll show up as like a giant flame on our trends panel, and it'll help the doctors navigate the records much more quickly, see more patients, and hopefully detect more seizures.
And as you already mentioned, you needed to train your data on some clinical EEG already labeled by clinicians. How did you do that? Where did you find this data? Did you collaborate with clinicians or you found some freely available recordings that were already labeled? How did you do that portion, essential, basically, portion of your development?
Yeah, one feature that we aren't going to have in our first version is automated detection by the AI, because that takes a massive amount of labeled data from experts. Now we've built a kind of like a toy version of automated seizure detection on the free public data that is out there by Boston Children's Hospital MIT. It's called CHB MIT data set. If you're interested, that'll give you some labeled seizures that you can mess around, try and build a automated seizure detector. So in the future, we're gonna have to I have to find a way to, I guess, build a big study with a bunch of hospitals and a bunch of data, but I'm not sure about the best way to go about that for my future version. So, what advice would you have about getting a bunch of hospitals? I'm pretty sure I need a IRB for clinical study and stuff. So that's something that I'm less familiar with. Like we can do the engineering and all that, but when it comes to running a real clinical trial and all that, you never done what you never done before. So I was wondering if you had any advice on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, I would recommend connecting with people. That's what I always recommend networking, finding your allies on the development of the software, clinicians, starting with one hospital. It will be much easier than to apply for funds for the study because it definitely will require funding. And with that institution, you can submit your IRB proposal, get ethical approval for the study, and then to start with that, then build from there, already networking from there, building multi-center study with other institutions. But I think networking and building connections here would be the key, I would say. And today, actually, there is, on the day of our recording, there is a electrocardiography workshop, and many people who give talks there are actually from the departments of neurology that are dealing with epilepsy surgery specifically. I think that's also a great networking event to listen and to connect. So events like this, I think, would be very good. And further building connections so where you already worked as EEG technologist, I think also would be great. Yeah. So that's a great would be a great start. Very good. Jared, what was the most challenging part in your development story of this software?
I guess the most challenging part, everything's gone pretty smoothly. Even when we failed initially, we were able to, it might have just taken a couple more weeks to get it done. We've never hit a roadblock where we hit it and we're like, oh, we're done. We can't do anything else. It's over. I think probably the whole thing is challenging, but I think challenging is exciting. It gives me something to do. It gets me going. So I just embraced the challenge. I knew it was going to be hard, but sometimes the more challenging something is, the more rewarding it is at the end of the day too, as well. And yeah, biggest challenge, never give up, but I'm not going to give up anyway. So, and then what else would I do anyways? I think this is just what I was meant to do.
Yes, I like your attitude and towards challenges. That it's fun. Okay, very good. Jared, do you have any suggestions, any advice to people who are listening to us and maybe they are contemplating of developing their own product in the future as well?
So if you're thinking about developing your own product in the future, I would recommend starting really small. I would recommend, if you're not technical person, you definitely need at least one technical person. I luckily had two with my brother and my dad that made it possible. So you need at least one technical person and one person who can focus on the business side or I guess the whatever the project is in. In my case, it was EEG. So I had the EEG and the business side, and then we also had the technical people. So start very small, get a couple people together, and if they're all around in the beginning, say, hey, we'll split the percentage of the business equally. So you're both equally motivated, and do it with someone that you trust. I did it with my family. I probably wouldn't just do it with someone who I'd met for a month or something like that. At least know them for about a year, maybe even longer, and just try to have fun with it. start something very small, even if it's just a feature and not a whole product, maybe a feature of a product. And then once you have that first thing, you can go on and evolve the product every week and make it even better. So every week, or what I try to do in the best case, I look at what we have and I go over feature ideas, current bugs that are in the product, and tests that we should do during that week as well. We go over those three things as a group. Then we're able to divvy up the work depending on each of our strengths. And then we do it during that week. And then the next week comes, and then we just repeat over and over again. So every week, the product evolves and it gets better and better. So don't judge yourself too harshly on week one or even year one. Just keep going with the process every single week, and you'll eventually get to something pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jared, for a wonderful talk. I wish you all possible success with the development of your software. And I'm very curious actually to try it when it becomes available, especially automated algorithms, which sounds very cool. And hopefully we will have an update from you in a couple of years with already you doing some clinical trials. Very possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the entrepreneurial world of neuroscience and neurotechnologies. I hope you've been inspired by the stories of those who are turning groundbreaking ideas into impactful realities. If you are looking for more guidance on succeeding in Neurocareers, book a free consultation with me, your podcast host, Dr. K, at the Institute of Neuroapproaches. So, what are you waiting for? Let's navigate the path to success in the world of Neurocareers and make the impossible possible together.